There's no reason why anybody should be bored in this life, but you have to tune into yourself and you have to find those points in you that resonate and then go for that. There's a chord in us when we feel romance, when we feel that delicateness of something and we want to cherish it. It's not something that you go hurrah about, it's something that you go, holy moly. I'm an anthropologist. Was one for many years professionally, and when I retired in 2001, I had another plan in mind to build classical guitars in a serious way. See how far I can take it. Oh, it's starting to look pretty good. People have asked me, how would I describe a classical guitar? An alluring sound. A sound that is inherently romantic. The guitar is an organic thing. Of course it's not alive, but it's made out of things that have life. Wood. Wood-built instruments. And particularly with handmade instruments. I think the term nuanced is maybe the best descriptor. Basically, everybody's guitars, within reason, are the same, right? The bodies are more or less the same and blah, blah, blah. But they sound quite different from builder to builder. All right. Those differences are the nuances, that the little details which get changed between when I build one guitar and another or between one builder and another. So those things all add something to the instrument. Very stiff. Very musical. Very musical. Yeah. It's going to be a beautiful tone. I guess I would describe it as a journey, and it's a journey of discovery. It's like Darwin out looking at animal species and trying to figure out why are these all different. I'm in a search for a better guitar, not the perfect guitar, there's no way to do that, but have more people appreciate them. I want to be in audiences and I want to listen to them being beautifully played and be a participant in that kind of a community, which is sort of closing the circle. It's a very fulfilling thing for me. As soon as this disappears, then I'll have a flat surface as long as there's a little different colors, and those are low spots. Okay. That's good. Yahoo! So this now, and when we put the neck onto the instrument, those are very critical, because if it gets off angle, it'll screw up the whole geometry of the guitar. And so I've glued it on the scarf joint that you saw me make, and now this will set up. Glue is slick until it sets up. When I check several times to make sure I'm still vertical. Then when you string the instrument up, you don't have a disappointment. Should make for a straight neck. It'll be choo-choo forever. At about the time that my high school career was winding up, the guitar had become something different than it was before. Before, it wasn't held in the best light. So the guitar didn't interest me at all. And then all of a sudden, there were groups that were accompanying themselves playing guitars. It captivated us. This is the result here of one that I've completed. So all of this material here will be removed. I like this curve. I like it to curve back on itself, and I like it to come to quite a sharp edge here. All right, so here we go. And you just take a little away at a time, and then all of those curves will be brought together and smoothed out with sandpaper. I was 17. I was broadsided on a motorcycle and wasn't expected to survive, but I did. After some months of recuperation in a body cast, a friend and I went to Portland, Oregon. I don't know why, but we visited a pawn shop, and there was a guitar hanging there. I thought, well, I think I'll buy that. And it had Gene Autry riding a horse and maybe some cattle in the background. And I bought the guitar and took it home, and with some judicious use of sandpaper, removed the cowboy and the cattle, and actually sanded a sunburst sort of design into the top of the guitar, and I then refinished it. And I guess that's when my lutherie started. But I made a guitar that I could stand to look at, and I made a guitar that I could play, and I started learning how to play guitars. And that guitar led to another one and another one, and then I got a nylon string guitar. And that was it. And then I moved to Hawaii to do some graduate work. I didn't take a guitar because we had all the luggage that we could take. And so I went into a music store and bought a cheap nylon string guitar, and there on the wall was a handwritten announcement by a fellow who was offering flamenco lessons. It turned out that he had learned to build a guitar from people he called Spanish gypsies, built his own guitar, and then took flamenco lessons from Pepe Romero, and then moved to Tahiti for some reason, where upon his guitar fell apart because it had been glued with animal glue, and with the humidity there, it just couldn't stay together. And so he cobbled it back together as best he could. This awful-looking guitar, with putting it back together, he didn't have a shop or anything to do it in. It really looked crappy, but it played, and he could play it, and he made it sound fine. My thought was, if he can do it, I can do it, I think. Starting to be nice and sweeping, you know, but that's getting close there. Tedious stuff here. As you work the wood, you learn what its grain structure is, and then you follow your instructions. The wood will tell you what it wants to do. Now this all comes back to another part of my life. When I was a little boy, and I had a grandfather who I never met, didn't even know his name, but he And that grandfather had actually made a violin. The violin was in the closet, and it had not been finished. It was in the white, as it's called. I used to take that out as a little boy and look at that thing, and man, it was just amazing. Somebody had made this with their hands, and I had tried to make things with my hands, and it didn't work. So I thought, this is amazing. And this was always kind of in the back of my mind, that somebody had made it, and it was a relative of mine. So when I met the fellow in Hawaii and I saw that he'd built a guitar, I thought, well, why not me too? I'll try it. And I decided that what I would do is aim toward the time I got my PhD done and build a guitar as a reward to myself, something that I would do that, didn't have time for otherwise. Pretty critical not to leave any extra glue. This sets for a few minutes and I'll saw these off. The beauty of this is that this is just like one solid piece of wood now, and this joint will never let go. The whole guitar could be destroyed. This thing will still be intact. It's just a solid piece of wood now. So that's the same thickness. I started buying books. The first book was Irving Sloane. At that point, I read everything I get my hands on, kept learning about it. I didn't have any tools. When I did finish my degree in '73, I built that guitar. Came out to Fargo and took a job at North Dakota State University, and I was the first anthropologist there. And I don't show that guitar to anybody. It's my little secret. It looks like crap, just like the other guys, but it plays. And I thought, okay, I can do better. I just need to keep working at this. And I did. And just keep refining, and the guitars got better, and I was less ashamed of showing them. And then in 2001, I retired from NDSU. I thought it's time for Plan B, and Plan B was to do this in a serious way. See how far I can take it. Good. Now the other side. I took a master class from Jeffrey Elliott in California, and he's one of the preeminent builders in the country. I built 2 guitars out of that workshop. They turned out fine, but there was still room to grow, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So I just keep building, and then I take my guitars to players, played them, and then they talked about them, and then they got back to me. And so the whole process is one of building, test driving them, seeing what their strengths and their weaknesses are, then rethinking, and then going in a little bit different direction. Let's see. Now we're going to come down here. That brace, $72. That sound envelope that we've inherited from Antonio de Torres because of the fan braces, because of the shape of the guitar and the depth of the body and the string length, that's been passed down to us, and we're taking them in our own directions. There we go. And they'll each be let in to that so they fit over this, but yet fit down on the soundboard. Then the other braces go over them. And so they get stiffer and stiffer as they get toward the middle of the board, and then they get less and less stiff as they get out here. And so you get this very complex cutting away of little bits so that these things can cross-lap. But it turns out to look very, very nice, and it's real solid. Ta-da! All right. There and here. Cut that on that angle right there. check myself. Okay, and now we test it. Did it work? You'll see that's absolutely perfect. So that's number 2. They just come out just as clean as they can. I'm a person that never really had an awful lot of patience. I really like to get things done, and when we get down to the final stages, I want to rush things and so forth. And I have this task in front of me here which cannot be rushed, and it is very meticulous, and you just gotta pay attention and do it, and take the time that it takes to do it. And there are all these little cuts, and there are no shortcuts. You just have to do it. And I've learned patience. I've learned to slow my life down. In the shop, hours go by and I don't notice. At this point of the guitar building, though, as I'm beginning to see it look like a guitar, my patience begins to run a little thin. I want it. I want to hear it. I want to feel it. I want to play it. There we go. Now we'll just do a dry fitting. There we go. I'm going to get some squeeze out here, but I'm going to take it out of the clamp after 15 minutes. Here, I'll pull this plug on it. Every string-driven musical instrument has an energy problem to solve. With a plucked instrument, you want to get as much energy into the soundboard as you can when you pluck a string. That's all you've got. If you have a violin, you bow it, and you keep supplying the string with energy. With a guitar, it's all the energy that the string gets that time. I'm wanting the center of the soundboard to be the stiffest, so that the bridge will not rock forward under the string tension. And I want the perimeter to be loose so that the whole thing acts as a diaphragm to make the sound. Okay. What I'm doing here is kind of a time-proven approach to solving that energy budget problem with a guitar. So we tweak the soundboard in ways that we've learned give us more volume, more projection, sweeter sound. It's a trade-off. The more stiffness you put in it, more highs you get, and then you rob the lows. A stronger soundboard is going to resist the pull of the strings, but it's not going to give you much volume. It's going to be kind of muted sounding. So we kind of tease it out to try to get the best that we can out of it without compromising the strength of it. The sort of standard statement by a luthier is to say, I'd like my guitars to last 150 years. It's one way of saying, I don't want to deal with any of the problems. I want to be long dead before this thing craps out. But it really, good instruments like this, like the instruments of Antonio de Torres, they hold up. All wooden instruments need to be repaired at some point. But we want that to be at a minimum. We want the people who play our instruments to enjoy them and not worry about them, to not have to wait for them to be repaired. So we try to make them as strong as we can to withstand what's going to be demanded of them for 100 or 150 years. That's kind of the benchmark. And of course, I've never tested that. That'll be something someone else will have to test that. Will these babies last 150 years? I hope so. Today we're going to do something more magic with the guitar. We're going to make a guitar look more like a guitar. We're going to join the body with the top. So the neck now is lined up with the body from the very tip of the peg head all the way back to the butt of the guitar are on a single line. I was cutting the transverse bars so that they're in there nice and snug. So you just sort of move into it by increments, and finally it drops in where you want it. Now it's waiting for Mother Nature. The moment of truth. This is where you don't want to find out that something's wrong. This is really tight. This is really tight. Hear how dead this is? This is where all the structure is. But even in here, it's starting to vibrate. Listen to that. What do you think? You're sitting there playing it. Before, I could take it like this. And now that this is stiff, you can look in there and see everything that's going on. You don't want a bunch of nasty gobs of glue. Okay. All right. Well, now we can hang this one back up. Well, the label allows the builder to make a historical statement that this is an instrument built by that builder at a particular date. On the inside of the soundboard, we normally sign the soundboard in pencil. So there are two things. If the label gets lost, you look in there with a mirror, you can find the sign soundboard and identify the year that the instrument was built. Building a guitar is not a goal. Building a guitar is a process. It's a journey. You know, you make some parts and you put some things together. You make some more parts and you put some more things together. And gradually the thing becomes a guitar. And you saw that when we put the top on. All of a sudden, and even when we put the body together with the neck, all of a sudden, boy, that's a guitar. Wow, very nice. Yeah, it's alive. It's alive. I like that. This is the fun part. Well, it's all fun, but this is the more fun part. So what I have here is a binding. It's pre-bent in the shape of the guitar. It's aesthetic, it's structural, and the idea is that these will form the edge of the guitar's back and top. Just look at this guitar without anything there. And it's just a dark field of wood. But as soon as you put a binding on, now that field is defined. It doesn't just go out into space anymore. Now it has a boundary. And that boundary is a beautiful curve. This is a shape that people really like. People respond to the aesthetics of this. And you have your line of sight, your vision goes along the guitar. And the same thing happens on the top of the instrument. A sensuous, curvy piece of wood that is just begging to have finish put on it. So it's a useful little piece of wood. It does a lot for us. I really want to hear this thing play. And it's still going to be a couple weeks or so, or maybe 3 weeks before it's done, because the finish takes a long time to put on. And you just don't rush that. You do that as long as it takes to do it. We'd begin to get a look into the future that's a little more tantalizing maybe than just a bunch of pieces of wood laying around. I think that in life, we all need passion. We need to find something that resonates with our soul, if you want me to use that term, or our psyche, if you're not comfortable with soul. Human beings have that quality of aesthetic response to things. It's not about practical, it's not about getting food or protecting yourself. It's about appreciating something for some intrinsic quality, some intrinsic beauty. If we identify it and can relate to it, that's where we have our passion. That, for me, is the essence of the good life, is to be able to discover points at which that passion awakens in you, and then do it. Just want to make sure that every surface gets some glue on it. It'll be way too much glue, but it'll squeeze out and I'll wipe it away. It's better than starving a joint. on down. 3 to go. Pictures as beautiful as art. We look at them, we emote to them, that sort of thing. You can look and emote to this thing too, but then you can play it or you can listen to it being played. And that adds an extra dimension to the appreciation, the aesthetics, the art. I salute my grandfather, whose violin sits on my workbench now, whose only thing he did in his life other than have my father was to make this violin that I know about. And it's been an inspiration to me for all these years since I was a little boy, thinking about the man who made that thing, and now being able to make these things myself. It's kind of a completion of the circle. It feels really good to me. I don't know how long I'll leave it on my workbench, but for the time being, that's where it's going to sit as my silent partner in all of this. Harvey. I salute you, Harvey. Harvey Brunton died at 35 years of age. Didn't get to do much with life. But his instrument lives on. That's a good thing too. Ready. Now, does that look more like a guitar? Frets. So, ready to carve? I gotta get that measurement and see what that is for sure. So I make notes. No. See, rule number 1, measure everything twice. Graceful neck taper is 21.5 to 24 at the 8th fret. We're doing is making landmarks here. So you just test this. Got a little bit to go. There it is. The first tool is a draw knife. Draw knives are lovely tools. The guitar that I build is part of a history, as everything is. And this is the tradition, the human tradition. As a species, we have things that we have created and get modified, changed, shared, spread, and they evolve. And that is the beauty of it. When I'm in the shop and I'm working on a guitar, everything is nuanced. You have to really pay attention to the finest detail. And it's totally intuitive. There's science with all the measurements, but there's also this other quality to it, which is intangible. Really close now. We got a hump right here. Not much. Still a little bit right there. Most of it. It's just a tiny, tiny bit now, still right there. Hey, you're just closing in on it, you know. There we go. But once the player gets a hold of that, we talk about guitars playing in. If you attack the strings hard, or if you're more delicate on the strings, depending upon what you're doing with your left hand, all of that affects the vibration of the strings. And the vibrations are put into the wood. And if the wood is subject to a different vibrational package, it's going to mature differently. You know, they say as the twig is bent. As you play that guitar, the guitar becomes your guitar. You will notice things about the guitar. You learn where you're going to play. And you're learning that from the guitar. The guitar is teaching that. This is who I am. Learn to play me. By the same token, I think the guitar is learning what the player is doing, because the vibrations that guitar is being subject to, all of that's being transferred into the wood, and the wood is maturing in that way. We're trying to decide which tuning machines to use. This is what the Hausers are going to look like with white. And the white is going to be matching up with white here. And now we pull those out and we put in the Gotoes. And now it really changes the look of the peg head. And you've got the ebony buttons here, and now the black here is following the black here, black lines there. All right, we'll go with those. Now, a moment of nervousness because I have this little flag on here to keep me from drilling through. And be sure that Oh boy, this is, my heart's going, you know, I'm very excited. I'm not apprehensive, I'm not really worried. You know, you've written a play and you had opening night. The stars mount the stage and the curtain goes up and you're waiting for the first audience reaction. That's kind of the thing here. The audience will be us, but the guitar, you know, is unproven, and I've invested a lot of hope in it, a lot of expectation, specific kinds of expectation. I think I know what I'm going to hear. And it's not that if I don't hear that I won't be happy, but that I'll be surprised. So let's do it and find out. The curtain goes up. This is alive. This is what I'm always afraid on. I don't want to hear a pop. It's alive all the way up. I don't hear any drop off on any string. Oh, that is so clean. It is so clean. That's so bright. We've come to a moment here in the life of a guitar. When it's brought to life for the first time, it's been wood and pieces. It's been a tree before that, and then it's been sawdust and all sorts of things, and now it gets to live a second life as a guitar. It's doing exactly what wood will do, and vibrating beautifully and making these wonderful lyrical sounds that we all appreciate in a guitar, in a Spanish guitar, and you know, it just keeps on giving. This thing could be alive now for 150 years or more and give people joy. So it's a nice thing to do, I think. Convert a tree to a guitar. Well, that's going to be fun. New baby. A year well spent. A winter. A good thing to do in North Dakota in the wintertime. Build a guitar.